Hello, this is Grace chatting. Welcome to Relationship Academy, where we teach lessons they didn't teach at school. And before we get going, be a good idea if you mute your mobile, grab a notebook and pen, because you'll need to take some notes and probably do some exercises as well. Where you see the symbol of the coffee cup indicates that it's a good idea to pause the video because there's an exercise that you'll need to do. So this first video is about who am I, which may seem a bit superfluous, but all will become clear as we carry on. An overview is that we're going to look at the messages and rules that you pick up during your growing up. We're going to look at defenses and how that feeds into how we perceive the world, and then look at limiting beliefs. And all of these things affect how we are in relationships. So it really is important. This really is the foundations of how we relate to people. So looking at who are you, you'll see the little child here in the middle with all the influences that go on around any of us when we come into this world. There's our parents, our caregivers, our family, community, religion, culture. All of these things affect how we see the world. We take in messages from them all, like big boys don't cry, girls shouldn't get angry, boys should always be strong, you know, white people are better than black people, or black people are stronger than white people, all those kind of things. They're all messages that we take on board as little children. So pause the video and have a look. Don't forget to download your handouts. There's a handout on messages and rules, and so it's a good idea to do that exercise now and look at all the messages you took on board from all of these sources, about men, about women and children and couples and families, and all the shoulds and the oughts and the musts that your particular family and culture put on you. And that was okay for them, and it's okay for you growing up. But that keeps you still being the child of your parents and not having become your own person. So just do that exercise now, and you'll understand more in a minute why it's so important to do that. Because these messages and rules from your environment become your operating system. And it is a bit like if you had a computer running on Windows 95. Well, Windows 95 was state of the art in 1995, but it's pretty defunct now, really. And likewise, if you're running on messages and rules that you picked up from your parents when you were a preschooler, they might have suited your parents when they were young, but they don't necessarily suit you in this time, in your life, in the place where you are. So it's really important to look at those, because they become hardwired into your neural pathways. Your brain holds those like they are the only way of seeing the world. And of course, different people in different families have got different messages and rules, and that's what makes for conflict in relationships, because everybody's got their own messages and rules hardwired into their neural pathways. So you really need to understand that. And that's why, when people get to New Year's Eve, why is it when they make New Year's resolutions that I'm going to stop smoking, or I'm going to write a book, or they're going to do something, but 6 or 7 weeks later they've reverted back to how they were. And that's the difference between transformation and change. You can change things, but they can change back again. And it's a bit like this iceberg. If you look at the iceberg, you'll see that the biggest percentage of it is below water. And the bit above water represents our explicit beliefs. It also represents what we're conscious of, what we know. And yes, it is only about 2 to 4% of our mind. is the bit that's conscious. All the rest, 96 to 98%, is unconscious. Everything that's there that we're not conscious of, we don't know what it is, and actually we don't know that we don't know. So there is a lack of coherence between what's explicit and implicit. In other words, what's conscious and what's unconscious. And consciously, we may mean to stop smoking, lose weight, write the book, or do whatever. But it's all the messages that are operating unconsciously which sabotage us. If you look at this tea bag immersed in the hot water, that's transformation. Once that immersion happens and the tea goes into the hot water, that water is not going to be water again. It is now tea. It's transformed. And by identifying the messages and rules in your subconscious and unconscious and changing those, that's you transformed. It's not a case of changing back to how you were before. And that's why it's really important to do the exercises that I give you in these webinars so that you can transform as opposed to just have a temporary change. So I want you now to look at the limiting beliefs that you hold from those messages and rules. I hope you've done that exercise now and you're looking at quite a lot of messages and rules that you took on board from all the aspects of your environment growing up. And the limiting beliefs usually begin with I should, I ought, I really must, I am, I'm not, I'll always, I'll never. So look at all of the limiting beliefs that you have taken on board from those messages and rules and repeat them for, men should, men ought, women should, women ought not. Husbands should, wives should always, men should never, couples, children, families should. What are all the messages that you've got? And they become limiting beliefs about all of these things. So it's worth taking the time to stop and do that exercise now. Now, what do we need to know about the brain here? This is a diagram of the brain, and you'll see right in the middle is a tiny little bit of your brain, which is called the reticular activating system, or RAS for short. And that little part of your brain is the bit that, if you were talking about red sports cars with a friend, and you were talking about red sports cars, then on your journey home or next time you're out and about, suddenly you start to notice red sports cars, and maybe you had never really took much notice of them before. But because they've been raised in conversation, you start to notice them. And it is this part of your brain, the reticular activating system, which tunes in and starts to pick them all up. Now, our reticular activating system is programmed to pick up in our environment all the things that reinforce the messages and rules and beliefs that we picked up as children. So actually, you'll notice here that I'm saying perception is about how you see the world, but it's not the world as it actually is. It's how you see it. Now, many of you will be familiar with this diagram or this photo or picture. Some of you will see a hag, a very old woman, and some of you will see a young girl. And both of all of you, if you look at it long enough, you'll see both of them. But our perception is set to see things in a particular way. And so this picture here shows the 7 blindfolded men and the elephant. Now you can see they're all touching a different part of the elephant. And if you ask them all to describe the elephant, they would all give you totally different explanations. The one who's up there on the ladder on the back would be giving quite a different description to the one who's got the tail or the one who's got the ear. but they'd all be describing an elephant. So I'm just wanting to make the point for you to understand that how you see the world is your particular view of the world, and that you see the world through a lens that was formed through the constructs that you formed growing up in your particular life with your particular parents and place in the world. And so it, people think, oh, well, that's the way it is. But you need to deconstruct that and then reconstruct it. So this is an opportunity for you to do that. So just saying a little bit more about that, you'll see here that we have events on the left and the stories that we tell ourselves about those events on the right. Now, it's not the events that happen to us that really harm us or hurt us. It's how we interpret those events. It's the stories we tell ourselves about those events. So, for example, when you were 2 or 3, perhaps you had a new baby brother or sister arrived. So that's the event. But you told yourself once you saw your mum with this new baby, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not okay. That's what little children tell themselves about these things, because they haven't got the cognitive development to understand that, having a new baby brother or sister doesn't mean that you're not enough at all. But that's the way little children interpret these things. So then the next time when you perhaps another event might be moving house or changing schools, because you've already got that story that you've told yourself, I'm not okay, I'm not good enough, you go into a new situation with that belief and that story. And so you feel, I'm different. You tell yourself, I'm different, I don't belong. You might have a different accent, you might have a different skin colour, there may be some differences about you, but fundamentally all children are have some differences, but it's what you tell yourself that makes the difference. So you tell yourself, I'm different, I don't belong. And so then you carry on through life with I'm not good enough, I'm not okay, I'm different, I don't belong. And then eventually maybe you go off to university or you leave home. And then you tell yourself, oh, nobody wants me, I'm on my own. And so, these things all feed into each other. But in order to tolerate the discomfort of all these feelings, people tend to build up defenses to protect themselves. They have a persona, and they cope with things in different ways. Like, the child, when the new baby arrives in the family, may start to become mother's little helper and be extra thoughtful and helpful to carry on winning approval. So stop pause the video and make a note of what were these events in your life when you thought you weren't good enough, or that you were different, or that you didn't belong, or you told yourself, I'm on my own. Because the reality of this is you were always 100% okay. It was just the stories you told yourself that you weren't good enough and that you weren't okay. That wasn't true. That was just a story that you told yourself. You were always 100% okay. Now, it's really important for you to take this message on board now and to remember you were always 100% okay. Whatever the situation that you came in with, and whatever events happened in your life, you were always okay. So it's time now for you to waken up and be the heroine in your own life and start dismantling all of these stories that you told yourself about yourself, and all the reinforcement that you got. In other words, stop being phony, get real and be yourself. Now, it's all very well saying that. You might be scratching your head and thinking, well, how do I do that? So, looking at our little girl here, you think, oh, how lovely she is. And, you know, we were all beautiful, wonderful, unique little children like that at one stage. But what are the defenses that you put up as a child to win approval? What roles did you play? Did you become a clown? Did you become a mother's little helper? Did you become daddy's little princess? What did you do to win approval? What roles did you play? And do you still do that now? That's really important, because usually the roles that we took on as children, we tend to carry on doing that. And whatever the circumstances in our family, we will tend to carry on doing that. For example, I won approval by being clever as a child, but equally, sometimes I was disapproved of and seen as being a smart aleck. So sometimes I would act stupid, sometimes I would act clever. The difficulty for me was I sometimes got it mixed up and would get into trouble. So pause the video and do this exercise now. Now, looking at these defenses, one that I've highlighted is inversion. Don't forget to download the handout on defenses so that you can look and see which defenses apply to you, because those defenses, when you get into an intimate relationship, those defenses come into play. And it's not the history of where those defenses came from that are the trouble. It's how those defenses keep you from being yourself, and they get in the way of you in relationship to other people. So inversion is one in particular. Often people, inversion is when we turn things around. So when we're feeling sad or frightened or worried or anxious, or sometimes even angry, we'll put on a smile, like the clown here. He's sad underneath, but he's got a painted smile. So people do that a lot because we've been socialized into hiding our feelings. But you cannot have an intimate relationship if you hide your feelings all the time. Intimacy comes from being real and connecting with someone else heart to heart. And if you're used to covering up your feelings and hiding them, you won't be able to form an intimate relationship. So it's really important that you start to feel your feelings now. So pause the video and just make some notes on that. Another often used defense that people, invariably don't know that they're doing is projection. And that's where we've got a quality or trait that we actually don't like in ourselves, and it doesn't fit in with our self-image. And we will tend then to see it in somebody else, usually our partner. And this happens pretty well, I would say, with all couples. At some point, they are projecting some of their own, disowned qualities in themselves, and they project them onto somebody else. Now, this is the kind of thing that operates where sometimes you'll get, a husband or a wife will get jealous and start accusing their partner of being unfaithful. And often it's when they're being unfaithful. So it's important to note if you're criticizing or noticing something in somebody else that you don't like, stop and ask yourself, when am I like that? When do I behave in that way? So, as it says here on the slide, own your own SIT, SHIT. So, who are you really? Well, you'll find on one of the bonus videos that there will be a video called Subpersonalities, because we all are made up our personality is made up of lots of different sub-personalities. And that's when actually you may be a very hard-working person, perhaps at work, but perhaps at home you're a slob, or vice versa. Or you may be a very serious and, thinking type person in one place, but in another place you may be the life and soul of the party. So we'll go into that. You'll learn more about that in the sub-personalities bonus video. So you'll see from all of this that you can almost finish up with the life sentence with all the messages and rules and the limiting beliefs that you have, that you form, and the perception you pick up of the world, and the way your reticular activating system picks out things to reinforce your view of the world. And then of course there's all the defenses that you build up against aspects of yourself which were not approved of, but which you've got, and how you can project them onto other people or cover them up and hide them, not just from other people, but even from yourself. You actually don't get to see them, and how you finish up wearing a mask and not ever being you, and not even knowing that you're going around not being you, and wondering why is it that you don't have a whole lot of success or fulfillment or happiness in relationships. So it is a kind of a life sentence, but you can create a new lens and you can get out of jail. So you'll see all these other videos which will help you with this process. To have a successful relationship with another person, you need to be your own person first and see the world through your own eyes. Up until you do this work, you will be seeing the world through the construct you created as the child of your parents, or the child of your caregivers. And it's only when you do this work that you really start to see the world through your own eyes. So take the time now to stop, and from the notes that you've made, look at what do you need to rediscover about yourself. What did you always want to do? What would you always have loved to do? I know lots of young men who finished up being engineers or going in the services, or different lines of work, simply because it was what their father wanted them to do, but it was never what they wanted. So it's a good idea to take the time to stop and consider, what did you want? Rediscover the aspects of yourself that you cut off from, and look at what limiting beliefs do you need to let go of. And some limiting beliefs you totally need to change and transform, because they block you, they get in your way in all aspects of your life, but certainly in terms of relationships as well, because the world has changed dramatically in the last 30 years even. During the lifetime for most of you, since you were little, picking up all the messages and rules from your parents, the world is an entirely different place. Relationships are totally different, and how people conduct relationships is totally different. So it's really important for you to do this work now. So I'll catch you in the next video. Bye now.